Welcome to For Good Measure, an interview series celebrating diverse composers and other creative artists, sponsored by a grant from the California Arts Council. I'm Nanette McGuinness, Artistic Executive Director of Ensemble for these times. In this week's episode, we continue our conversation with Hitomi Oba, who we spoke to in December 2023. Well, speaking of family, I understand you're also a mother.
Yeah.
Yeah. So has that affected being a composer and an artist? And if so, how?
Yeah,
other than the obvious one of
absolutely.
time.
Time. I was gonna say time is big. This is such a big topic, and Nana, I've been thinking about it more and more. I've only been a parent for 5 years now, which seems like an eternity, but also
Oh,
seems
yeah.
very short in the time span of things. Yeah, so it's a big topic, and I'm thinking about this. I keep having renewed big reflections on this, every month or so. Recently, I've been thinking, so outside of my own experience, this is related, and that is like the perception of being a mother. I've been thinking about our position of mother within the wider
Yes.
society, right?
Yes.
And that obviously affects us as professionals and as just people, individuals. But
Yes.
I'm recognizing the societal biases and like stereotypes, and how that affects our profession,
Hmm.
and it still manifests in a lot of ways. And I am kind of like working in a lot of different spheres within music, obviously like academia and like kind of the more jazz or improvised, oriented scenes. And, within that, there are a lot of branches and different scenes within that, new music, such and such. But yeah, so it manifests in different ways, but I still, just last week I encountered some, seemingly well-meaning comments that are like obviously, informed by their biases. And, I'm starting to recognize these things more as I'm becoming more aware of them, assumptions that like, childcare inhibits work and professionalism, which is in other fields too. But, I've seen that, how it manifests in my spheres, or how like once you're a mother, like that's your identity. You're like capital M mother, and it's like that's your identity, like.
Yes.
And this, my husband is also a musician, and I think just seeing the comparison of how he's perceived and how I'm perceived differently, even though we're in the same profession and even though we're, both parents,
Yes.
is that's been really revealing as well. So not just reading these articles about it, but actually experiencing it and noticing these things more. Yeah, but I think because I'm becoming more aware, I've been a little more wary and also trying to preemptively counter them, maybe subconsciously. I'm trying to work through like a healthy balance of not being as bothered by it, but also trying to counter it, So yeah, that's been interesting, just kind of how do we function within the society and how do they perceive us? But yeah, but separate from that, I've also been appreciating like more empathy for the situation too, and like that's important as well, right? So not just kind of biases, but also like acknowledgement of like family policies, challenges that affect our profession in particular, and like childcare challenges and such, financial demands, so like acknowledgement of those things by others has been, I've been appreciating that as well. So I think talking to a lot of people has been helping. But just in terms of being a parent though, so logistically, oh yeah, it's so different. It's very difficult, right? You've shared it's very difficult. Like your capacity for time and your capacity for energy and mental and emotional capacity is like, I start to feel like the limits of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just being tired affects everything, right? And I think when I became a parent, it was like everyone would kind of like joke about the tired thing and like tired thing. And it's like, but it's
It's
like
real.
it's real. It's very serious, and it affects things like across the board, creativity, functionality,
Yeah. Yeah.
relationships, like everything. So, I mean, logistically, it's been difficult, but I think because of that, I've gotten better. Like I feel like I've ranked up in terms of maturity,
Yes.
and professionalism. So dedicated, being able, because right, our especially our practices like requires to be so dedicated and focused.
Yeah.
It requires like hyper focus, hyper yeah, prioritization and, compartmentalizing the ability to be present, like wholly present, and has been, it's a necessity. And so I've gotten better at that for sure, to
Uh-huh.
be like, I can't wait for inspiration, like I can't, it's like, yes, we're, focus now, and because it's now or never,
Right, right.
So in terms of like just being, yeah, present as well, I think it's necessitated that, and I appreciate that element, just being a lot more present and, in the moment, because that's all you're gonna get,
Right, right.
So that's been, I've been grateful for that, where, yeah, as a human, it's been really enriching, obviously, it's just, I feel like where I'm talking about capacity, like capacity for emotions, and I brought up empathy and just like, depth of experience for things. I've also become more observant,
Hmm.
of everything. Um, I feel like I have more no, new perceptions and worldviews every day, which is really important for someone whose, job it is to be imaginative, right?
Yes.
Our job is to imagine things, and so, having more worldviews and ways of perceiving things is just, it's a gift. It's very enriching,
Yeah, yeah.
capacity to feel more things, and like I realized recently, like it's like, oh, I haven't been this intensely involved with another person since I was a baby, but probably a baby with my own mother, right?
Right,
And
right.
so getting that intimate and having to see their perception, at that level is, it's an amazing thing too. Yeah.
Right, right.
And
Because they're experiencing everything for the very first time and kind of
yes.
like seeing that from someone else's perspective,
Yeah.
and you get a whole new vision of what the world really
Right.
is like, which is very cool.
It's very cool. Yeah, you
Yeah.
get to do it again a little bit, but from a different angle. Yeah,
Yeah,
like you
yeah, yeah.
said. Yeah, it's an amazing thing. Um, yeah, so I think like I said at the beginning, it's I've become able to be more present, but also like a little more centered.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a little more core like strength a little bit now, and meaning, yeah, meaning, like priorities have changed, like what's important, what's really important. I feel like I'm re-examining that constantly now.
Hmm.
And it
Hmm.
feels less elusive, I think. So, yeah, values, priorities, all of those things. Um, and then in turn, then when you have that, it's easier to do things with renewed appreciation, right? Like I used to feel like guilty, for doing one thing. Like I used to, when I was younger, it'd be like, I'm practicing saxophone, so I'm not practicing piano, or,
Right, right, right.
now it might be like, I'm spending time doing, even when they were, I first became a parent, it used to be like, oh, like I should be spending this time with this baby who's not going to be a baby for very long. Every second I should be enjoying and like wholly absorbed. But then, I would also feel like, but I'm not composing right now, and I'm not practicing and making the most of my musical,
Right.
what imagination. But I think now I have two kids. I'm less tired. I'm less sleep deprived now, so less negative lately. I think I've been able to, when I'm in a good place, I'm able to frame it now. Like I said, with renewed appreciation, to be like, oh, I'm grateful. I think I'm able to frame things a little more with gratitude now, to be like, oh, I'm so grateful for this time I have right now to compose, because I know
Hmm.
I'm not going to have this hour later. And then, when I'm with my children, it's like, oh, I get to interact with them right now. And, they were in preschool earlier. I couldn't see her, but now I'm able to spend this very special time with them.
I was going to ask you about the enriching aspect of the multiplicity of hats and roles that one
Right.
can wear as a mother.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned like you say like wearing different hats. I feel like each of those things, like I said before, sometimes, mothers tend to be capped as like one sort of identity, but kind of being able to recognize that there are multiple facets, and that I can be grateful when I'm engaging with any one of those, has been a more recent kind of realization and way of being. So, when I'm composing, I'm able to say, I'm so grateful to be able to do this, to have this in my life, to be able to compose. what a fortunate thing have. Then when I interact with my children, it's like, well, I'm so grateful to be able to have this. I'm not going to always have this, now.
Yeah, yeah,
So being able to grateful for that. And then, if I'm driving in the car or, just washing dishes and I have a moment to myself, being like, wow, I have a moment. I'm so grateful for this time I have myself. It's just like, or interacting with my students, like I'm grateful for this interaction I have. And so I think when I'm in a good space of mind, and I'm not too tired and I'm able to kind of flip it to look at like that, then everything, the multiplicity, everything that I have, I can be more grateful for, and then I can be more present for, therefore, and
exactly.
appreciate all the different elements instead of feeling guilty that I'm, one is taking over the other, feeling like they're competing elements of my life.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
From my perspective, society's become a little bit better at
Mm.
accepting mothers who do other things. It just wasn't as accepted when I was coming up. But at the same time, I totally relate to what you're talking about, because there were always people who were not my child who would want to call me mom.
Yes.
Let's have mom come over here. And
Yes.
I'm like, what?
Yes. I
Am I your
have
mother?
a name. Yeah. I know, I can so relate. Yeah, I agree. I feel like, for instance, my students' generation, the college students, they understand these things so much better,
They do.
on a
Yeah.
deeper level. It's more matter of fact to them, and they understand kind of the, historical inequities and such. So I appreciate that, and it's encouraging. When I am in certain spheres, like you said, it's a lot better and much more understanding. In certain spheres, like I just played a recent gig where there weren't as many people, maybe who were exposed to that, and it still felt like,
Uh,
oh, this feels a little bit, more old school.
Judgy. A little
A little
judgy.
judgy, a little more
Yeah,
judgy,
yeah, yeah.
not understanding, yeah, not seeing the picture, yeah.
Thank you for listening to For Good Measure, and a special thank you to our guest, Hitomi Oba, for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast by clicking on the subscribe button, and support us by sharing it with your friends, posting about it on social media, and leaving us a rating and a review. To learn more about E4TT, our concert season online and in the Bay Area, or to make a tax-deductible donation, please visit us at e4tt.org. This podcast is made possible in part by a grant from the California Arts Council and generous donors like you. For Good Measure is produced by Nanette McGuinness and Ensemble for These Times, and designed by Brennan Stokes, with special thanks to co-producer and audio engineer Stephanie M. Neumann. Remember to keep supporting equity in the arts, and tune in next week for Good Measure.